Going on, fight fans? Welcome to Fight Night, brought to you by KOD Media and the Knights of D-Gen. My name is Proto. I'm here with KevDog / Emperor G. How you doing, buddy?
Living the dream, man. Living the dream. It's something about that intro, man. Gets me so pumped up every single time. It's just a beautiful thing. Can't wait to hop into this card.
Yeah, and we're here to discuss UFC on ESPN, UFC on ABC, right?
Or I think ESPN? It's on ABC. I think it's on ABC. We may have to double check that, but I do know that it's going down.
Missing me up because they go by UFC Vegas and they go by UFC on ESPN. But I know I believe it's UFC on ESPN 37, if I'm not mistaken. But it's live June 18th this Saturday from Austin, Texas, in front of a live audience here. So what do you think about this card going on? I know last card we both made a little bit of money on. It was entertaining as could be, UFC 275. So what do you think about this one coming up?
Man, it's a fun one, man. We've got a fantastic main event ahead of us that is knocking on the door of a title shot. You know, both guys are feel like they're at the pinnacle of their career, and this is probably the biggest fight for both of these guys. So, you know, one of these guys is going to be extremely disappointed after Saturday night, and you know, it's taking place in Austin, Texas, I believe. So, you know that the energy is going to be lively, and I already know we're going to see some knockouts and some submissions, no doubt about it.
Yeah, let's see if we can one-up last week's card with all that was going on there, the violence, that main event there. No one thought it would go 5 rounds, and sure enough, it went until 30 seconds remained. And then you kind of have the opposite story going on this week, and everyone pretty much expects this one to go the distance. So if we've learned anything over the past few months from these events, that it most likely the opposite's going to happen here.
100%. And man, just be very cautious with these judges, man, because who in the world knows, you know, what we're going to expect. You know, and best advice, you know, from here on out, like if you're on a side, you know, they have to have that finishing factor, man, because if you're just relying on that decision these days, from what we've seen the last few months, I mean, it's hard to explain, man. It's unfortunate, and hopefully they'll clean things up in the judging department. But with that being said, man, this card's gonna be a banger. I have a good feeling about it. The energy in Texas is gonna be incredible, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. We got 6 fights on this main card. So,
yeah, I mean, that's unique on its own, right? Usually we're stuck at 5 fights, but just to segue off what you said, you don't want to leave it into the judges' hands. And that brings us into this first fight to start off this card. And that is Gregory Rodriguez, the RoboCop, taking on Julian, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Marquez. Gregory Rodriguez is 11-4 in his professional career, 2-1 in the UFC. Julian Marquez, 9-2 professionally, 3-1 record in the UFC. Gregory Rodriguez opened up as the -200 favorite. That line has since streamed down to -170 on DraftKings Sportsbook. And the comeback on Julian Marquez there is at +150. And, you know, both big finishers. Gregory Rodriguez, 82% finishing rate in his fights, whereas Julian Marquez has a 100% finishing rate. So definitely going to be fireworks here. And also what you just said about the judges, Kev, that's what Gregory Rodriguez spent most of his fight week at his press conference talking about, was that last fight where he believed that he beat Petrosian on the scorecards, and in his mind he thinks that he won, but, you know, the judges just happened to score it differently that night. So it's funny that you bring that up, and that this fighter actually made note of it about how much time he spent talking about that last fight. So it goes to show it's not off his mind yet, and I don't think that's a very promising sign when you're facing someone like Julian Marquez, who comes out of Glory MMA, coached by James Krause.
Yeah, you said it. You said it very well, man. Gregory Rodriguez, man. I mean, look at the dude. He's athletically gifted, you know, and he's going to have a massive reach advantage here with 4 inches. So I expect this fight to probably stay on the feet. And, you know, both guys, they have that don't blink mentality. Like if you turn away for 5 seconds and look back, someone might be, you know, flatlined on the mat here. This is just one of those fights, man. It's going to be gritty. I think it's going to be think it's going to be a brawl. Rodriguez, he just has this mentality of just teeing off on somebody. And, he has a really good, 1-2 combo, 1-2-3 combo. And, I was looking at some of his recent fights, man. And, he knocked out, he's not the most talented guy, but there's no doubt that he has an iron chin, and that's Junyoung Park. I mean, first knockout of his career. And, and a guy like Marquez, I look at him, I don't think he's extremely skilled per se. I think that he still has some flaws in his game. But like you said, man, he's in the right training camp to evolve and get better. I think he started off actually at Syndicate MMA for at least 5 years or so. And about 2 years ago, he moved over to Glory MMA with one of the best coaches in the industry. So, I believe that Marquez will have a good game plan here, but man, you just got to be careful with the guy in Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, Rodriguez is as dangerous as they come. And it's funny because he is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialist, yet only 3 of his professional wins have come by sub. And he's shown in his UFC career thus far that he doesn't necessarily want to use it. He loves swinging. He loves, the power that he holds in his fists. And, to his demise, I think he's fallen in love with his hands a little bit too much, especially we saw it in the last fight where, he kept it standing against a kickboxer who was, much more well-versed in the stand-up game than he is. He did hold his own, to give him credit there, but it just shows, the lack of fight IQ. I don't want to be hard on him, but he's shown in even the Junyoung Park fight that, his fight IQ isn't all there. He tends to gas himself out early in the fights. We've seen it happen in both the fights. Last fight, not as bad, but you have to imagine that's because there wasn't much grappling going on. Whereas in this fight, Marquez isn't scared to grapple. I do think that Marquez will have a speed advantage here, though, with the hands on the feet. Gregory throws hard. He's not necessarily going to throw with, speed or much technique, but if he hits you, it's going to count for a lot.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing with Gregory Rodriguez is, not only does he gas himself out so early, but his style of fighting requires so much energy, right? Like when he's punching, he's literally punching to knock you out. He's not a point striker by any means. And yeah, man, it's going to be, I think it's just going to be a dirty brawl. Like Marquez, I think that he may try and clinch this up, and he has really good elbows in the pocket there. So yeah, I think we could potentially see a finish here. Now, mind you, Julian Marquez has never been finished, if I'm not mistaken.
Granite chin. He has an absolute stud chin.
Super, super tough. And the fights that he has had in the UFC, man, I mean, there are some moments where he was getting clocked and was able to, stay composed. And in a few of those, he was able to get the dub. I mean, he's 3-1 in the UFC. So, that's not something to play around with. And this is just one of those fights, man, where, the winner of this fight really takes that next leap into, potentially going into that top 15 range, whether it's, after this fight or maybe one more to crack that top 15. So, going to be a really fun one to kick off this card, and definitely looking forward to a potential KO in this matchup.
Yeah, and you would have to think, considering the chin that Marquez does hold, and being that Rodriguez, 2 of his 4 professional losses have come by knockout, that there's going to be an edge there for Marquez if he catches him. I know that the line was streamed up a little bit. I think a finish there for Marquez is highly, possible, especially when you consider Gregory Rodriguez's fight against Junyoung Park, the one that you just brought up. He was the one that was against the ropes there. He was about to be finished up until he landed that clean shot that just, it took everything out of Park. But one thing from that fight I wanted to bring up was that Park at one time in the fight had a really tight anaconda choke in on Gregory Rodriguez. And I know that he's a jiu-jitsu ace, but Marquez has great chokes. I mean, he's shown in his last fight, and he does actually have a win by anaconda choke, funny enough, 2 fights ago. And I think that that's definitely a possibility that you have Marquez by sub. I saw it around like plus 900, which I think is a little bit insane. I know you have these jiu-jitsu guys, they have all the credentials in the world, but it doesn't necessarily translate into an MMA fight. And just being that Park got that choke in so deep, a coach like James Krause is going to recognize that. And I'm sure he had Julian drill that up all fight camp long. So plus 900 there for a guy in Marquez that does have submissions to his game, specifically chokes. I think that you're going to get a lot of value there.
Yeah, and I mean, you're getting Marquez at a plus money line here. And you talk about him, that groundwork, and he is a purple belt under James Krause. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be electric. I expect Gregory Rodriguez to probably be pushing forward, and Marquez will at least be on the back foot, at least in the first round, depending on how the cardio will last throughout the fight. So yeah, man, it's gonna be I really do envision this one to end in a finish. I'd be I'd be shocked if this goes 3 rounds, but hey, if Yuri and Glover can go nearly all 5 rounds, anything's possible.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was just a mind blower. But just a negative against Julian Marquez is he has shown to have poor takedown defense. It's sitting around 53%, and in 3 of his 4 UFC fights, he's been taken down 4+ times. Which against someone like Rodriguez, if he chooses to grapple with you, it's not something you want to go through. I mean, Rodriguez has landed 2+ takedowns in every single one of his UFC fights. So if he's smart, if he wants to play this fight to win it, Rodriguez, he has to bring this fight to the mat and have dominant position. And, we've seen he is elite when it's, wrestling transitions are going on. He has an elite body lock. So if he's in top position, his mount game's good, his ground and pound's good. He has the submissions. So he does have paths to win this one. I just don't know if he's going to withstand that for, 2-3 rounds, especially if this one goes deeper into the fight. I think the longer it lasts, the better it goes for Marquez. And, sitting at plus 150 value, it was sitting at plus 175 earlier. So sharp money is driving that line down a little bit. And, as it stands, I would say the value side is on Marquez, because you and I spoke right before this thing kicked off. You thought personally that this fight is closer to a coin flip. I tend to agree. I think that you can make this one minus 110 both sides, even give minus 120. I'd be willing to play it up to Marquez here. So plus 150, plenty of value there for me. As it stands, the round props over 1.5 is sitting at minus 195, over 2.5 plus 130, fight to go the distance sitting at plus 150, with fight not to go the distance sitting at minus 205 there. So if any of those interest you, there's definitely opportunities to play within the distance here too.
Yeah, no, for good reason. Like I said, these guys, they just have hammers in their fists. That's the best way to put it. And, if Gregory Rodriguez wants to keep this a standing affair, I just think the gas tank is going to let out on him, and it'll be really hard for him to win a stand-up affair in the 2nd or 3rd round if he's not putting him out. So, he's going to have to utilize that full game here. And I think this fight is really going to put that IQ to the test. If, you just got to work around that Marquez, right? I mean, if he keeps this standing, it's just not going to end well. I think Marquez probably has a little bit more volume on the feet, where maybe Rodriguez might be a little bit more impactful with their shots, but nothing against the Cuban Missile Crisis, because he can land clean.
He throws bombs. Yeah. We saw it in his last fight.
100%. And, I just think, like, in regards to the boxing volume, with a combination of that cardio, if this is a strictly boxing match, Rodriguez is probably going to lose 29, 28, 30, 27. Just one of those things. So, he's going to have to utilize those Brazilian origins and take this to the mat if he wants to have a chance here at a significant favorite, minus 175 currently on DK. So we'll see where that number lies. But, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if that creeps back up to minus 200 here by fight time.
Yeah, and I mean, what a way to start off the main card. That is an absolute banger of a fight. It is definitely going to give the crowd what they came there to see. So that one, I can't wait for it personally. And, if you're ready to move on to this next one, I think we have another great fight following it up with Damir Ismagulov versus Guram Kutateladze. Damir Ismagulov is 23-1, 4-0 in the UFC, former M1 lightweight champion, absolute stud of a fighter in general, versus Guram Kutateladze, who is 12-2. He's 1-0 in the UFC, and he actually made his debut against the current number 12 ranked lightweight in Mateusz Gamrot. But for what it's worth, that fight took place 20 months ago.
Yeah, no, this is and mind you, that win is aging quite well, because we have Gamrot on the main event next weekend. Yeah. So, no, this is a really, really interesting fight and very difficult to find an edge, just because, you look at the tape from Kutateladze, year and a half ago and beyond. And man, I mean, we've seen fighters evolve incredibly well off of a layoff here. And, it was interesting because I was watching a video of Kutateladze this week, and, he trains in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken.
With Hamzat.
He trains with Hamzat Chimaev, and even called Hamzat his little brother, which I don't know how that's going to age. But, the guy across from him is absolutely no joke. I mean, both of these guys, Ismagulov is incredibly skilled and has shown a lot of flash and potential. Ismagulov is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. And, both guys are just very explosive. That's the best way you can put it. Like just like the previous fight, both of these guys are here to take your head off, and, might be a little bit more technical than the previous fight, but Yeah, no, I love this era of Georgian fighters coming to the UFC, and not Georgia in the United States, the Georgian country.
Yeah.
Just to name a few: Giga Chikadze, Roman Dolidze, who's fighting earlier on the prelims, Merab Devashvili, who's fighting our boy Jose Aldo soon, and Ilya Taporia. So, yeah, there's just this incredible wave of fighters from this region, and I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, that previous win by Kutateladze is. It aged quite well, but again, it's just one of those things where you look at this fight, and man, you can only imagine that Kutateladze has evolved since that last fight, and we may even see something different that we've yet to see.
Yeah, and in terms of layoffs, I mean, Ismagulov is on a layoff of his own. He hasn't fought in 13 months, and he is 4-0 in the UFC, but he entered the promotion in 2018, so he hasn't been the most active. I know when he was over in M1. As I mentioned before, he was the lightweight champion there, made 3 title defenses before moving over to the UFC. But for the most part, you would have expected him to move up the ladder a little bit quicker than he has. So, he's fighting a guy in Kutateladze here who has almost half the professional fights as he has. And at the level he's been fighting, I think you have to give a big advantage to Ismagulov there. And, we saw him in his last fight, I believe was off a 2-year layoff there against Rafael Alves, and he got dropped in like the first 10 seconds of that fight just to, show what ring rust really is. He got dropped right away. And actually in that fight, it was the first time he lost a round in his UFC career. I mean, otherwise he's won like multiple 10-8 rounds. I know he had a 30-25 win earlier in his UFC career as well. So this guy's no joke. It was interesting to me how often he wanted to grapple in his last fight. After that 2-year layoff, maybe he didn't trust his hands that much, especially after getting dropped early. But it was quite the contrast to his earlier fights where he was willing to exchange and throw in the pocket, hide behind those counters, catch you at the end of his punches. Whereas, like I mentioned, he just wanted to wrestle in that last fight. But if that's any sign, Kutateladze struggled with the takedown defense against Mateusz Gamrot. And we all know there's levels to the game. Mateusz Gamrot, as we both mentioned before, he's number 12 lightweight in the UFC at the moment. A big part of his strengths is his wrestling. So it'll be interesting to see how Ismagulov weighs in comparison to Gamrot here, and if all that training with Khamzat Chimaev will pay off here for Kutateladze.
Yeah, and what I love about Kutateladze is he has this really strong body kick, and he has this diversity of kicks, like this arsenal of kicks that you don't really see very often. These wild tree chomping front kicks and these spinning kicks. I mean, it takes a lot of not only skill but energy to do that. But with that being said, when we're talking about the cardio here, I have no doubt that both these guys are extremely disciplined, and that in the offseason that they are training their cardio, they're training their butts off to be PG. So as this fight progresses, I don't really find an edge on a certain fighter. I firmly believe that both these guys are going to be well trained for this fight and are ready to go 3 rounds if need be. But man, it's just something about Kutateladze, like his confidence, like just watching him, man, it's a scary sight, to be honest. And you just look at the guy; he's absolutely shredded, and he's just got that Muay Thai style. It's really, really fun to watch. And yeah, this is probably going to be one of the closer fights on the main card. I believe it's just one of those very highly skilled, 2 fighters coming from very different regions. And, it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. The Georgian Viking coming back after a year and a half and, see if he's what people are really talking about. I mean, he's only had 1 fight in the UFC, but, when you're training with, Khamzat Chimaev and, you're calling him your little brother, I mean, you've got to imagine that he's maybe found a little bit of knowledge from Chimmy. So, this is going to be a fun one. I haven't yet chosen a side. It's really difficult to handicap this one again because Kutateladze, 1.5-year layoff, and then Ismagulov, a year layoff. So it's like both these guys, we can just see a complete different evolution of the fighter. So, going to be a fun one. Can't wait for it. 100%.
Yeah, I think if any of them could have benefited from this, it would be Kutateladze because, judging off the limited tape we have of him, I mean, really for the most part, it's that UFC debut. He does have areas where he really needs to work on, specifically the takedown defense. And, I love that you mentioned his kicking game because he has to throw kicks at a higher percentage than he throws punches because pretty much everything was kick after kick. I know he does that unique kick where he just comes up and he wants to stomp you on the top of the head with it. But the one note I made about that was he doesn't necessarily set up his kicks. And watching tape back for Ismagulov when he fought Thiago Moises, he has a very similar kicking style that Kutateladze brings to the table here. And he as well didn't set them up. And for the most part, Ismagulov, he dodged everything that he saw coming his way because, without the setup against someone as skilled as Ismagulov is, with the level that he was fighting at in the M1, promotion, you're not going to get him with just basic rudimentary kicks like that. I mean, it is flashy looking, but to someone like Ismagulov, it's just another day at the office. It's basically sparring to him. So I think that for me, I'm going to weigh a lot into the experience factor of Ismagulov coming into this one. And, he has looked really good. He's fought very good competition too in the UFC. It's not like he's just fighting bums. I mean, Thiago Moises just fought Islam Makhachev in a 5-round main event not too long ago. So it's, different levels. I know Mateusz Gamrot is a great name to have on your resume, especially with one fight in the UFC. But, I don't think that there's any area where Kutateladze can bring this fight that is going to, put Ismagulov in trouble. I think that if anything, his only path to victory here is going to be by a knockout with one of those kicks that Ismagulov just doesn't see coming. But otherwise, I could really see this one going the distance. I can see Ismagulov winning by decision here. I mean, he doesn't have many finishes in the UFC. I don't think he has any in the UFC. So it'll be very interesting to see how this one plays out. And there is something I wanted to make note of, that Guram Kutateladze, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but not just any jiu-jitsu, in Japanese jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Japanese jiu-jitsu. So I just wanted to make note of that. I thought that was very interesting because you don't really see any fighters have that credential to their name.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And one other thing that I wanted to point out in this fight, man, if Ismagulov is able to take this to the mat, like I feel like Guram still has that that ability to work off his back, like you have those fighters that are either one, going to kind of just stay there, can't get up, don't know how to get up. Two, are able to get up. And three, are able to turn that off the back into a submission. And I think that if he does get taken down, which I do expect him to get taken down in this fight, I fully expect him to find the submission, like stay active on the bottom. And again, he's just so incredibly explosive. You just never know what you're going to see. And, it could happen. We could potentially see a submission here. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Guram submission. I mean, you said it, black belt Japanese jiu-jitsu. So, what's it? Wait, JJJ. Yeah, Japanese jiu-jitsu. Hell yeah. So, this is, man, I can't wait for this fight. I'm looking at this entire main event card, and this is probably the one I'm most looking forward to, just because, man, like both these guys have so much potential. Like, they're at that age, 31. There's really no slowing down at this point in their career. And this is like a must win for both these guys if they really want to make a splash in this division. So going to be a very highly skilled, technical, calculated fight. And I cannot wait for it.
Yeah, and you have to imagine both guys are chomping at the bit to get back in there. I mean, you just mentioned it. They're 31, 32 years old, I believe. And, they've both been on long layoffs in what should be the prime of their careers. So I agree with you that this one could see a finish. I mean, if you like the finish here, fight not to go the distance, sitting at plus 130. If you like it to go the distance, minus 175, whereas the over 2.5 rounds sitting at minus 230 and the under at plus 185 coming in on the other side there. So if you like it not to go the distance, you're better off playing that under 2.5 for about 55 more points there at plus 185. I mean, that's got decent value there for two guys that can end the fight. I personally don't see it going, but if you like that side, you're getting good plus money there.
Yeah, and given like with these long layoffs, I feel like both these guys are not going to come out guns blazing. I mean, by all means, I think it'll be one of those where they just kind of feel each other out. Maybe for the first 2-3 minutes of this fight. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's so easy to put yourself in danger. And, with these types of layoffs with the ring rust, I don't foresee both of these guys going head first, type of fight. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be one of those where it's going to be a chess match. That's just the best way you can put it. So
yeah, and both guys hit hard. So it'll be, like you said, an interesting fight to watch here. But coming up in this next fight, we have Albert Uraya versus Joaquin Buckley. Uraya is the minus 225 favorite here. This fight, the line has been sitting there at minus 225, hasn't moved up or down too much. But Uraya 15-3 professionally, 1-0 record in the UFC. Joaquin Buckley 14-4 professionally with a 4-2 record in the UFC. Before we go any further on this fight, I do want to give a shout out to Joaquin Buckley because in his last fight, I remember I gave out Joaquin Buckley by decision at plus 450, And prior to that, he has never gone to decision in UFC, whether win or lose. So thank you, Joaquin, for helping cash that split decision for us. So I wish I had it by split, but I'll take the plus 450.
Yes, sir. No, this is an interesting fight, man, because number one, Duraev is a Dana White Contender Series prospect, right? Dominated in the Dana White Contender Series there, and then made a splash in his debut, 1-0 in the UFC, and then a guy in Buckley, man, he's kind of been around, man. He's been fought in Bellator, quite a few times, and I think he may have a fight or two in LFA. And then he's 4-2 in the UFC, which is no joke. But what I love about Buckley, man, is obviously he has an extreme amount of power. And, on paper, you look at this guy and it's like, okay, well, this guy's probably going to gas because of all that muscle. But, man, this is one of those guys that is really able to push through that adversity late, in a fight, and again, on paper, like physiologically, you look at the guy, you would expect that energy to diminish so quickly, especially in the first round. But, man, he's one of those guys that, that late finish it could potentially be live here, man. It's, I don't know if I've seen a lot in Duraev to say, okay, minus 225, put that type of juice on him. I don't know. It's, he comes out of Russia, so he's going to have that wrestling aspect to his game. I don't think we've seen it a ton since he's been in the UFC. Of course, it hasn't been much experience, but yeah, no. What I do like about Duraev is he does have exceptionally good footwork for his size. I think he stays pretty elusive on the feet. He doesn't really stay put. And with that, though, I think that Duraev is a little bit small for this division. I don't know. I was looking at some of his previous fights, and if I'm not mistaken, he had fought at the welterweight division for a few fights there. So, moving up, I mean, he's not moving up for this fight, but I'm just saying, fighting now in the middleweight, versus a guy in Buckley, man, I think there's going to be a massive power advantage for Buckley. I mean, you just look at the guy, and it's just one of those things where he's kind of putting the pieces together. I mean, it's just one of those things. I don't look at Buckley as a guy who's a bona fide stud in the mixed martial arts department, but I do like to believe that he's evolving as a fighter. He's learning from his mistakes, and for a guy that's making his 7th UFC fight versus a guy in his 2nd UFC fight, there's no doubt that he's going to have that instinct in this fight, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. Again, both these guys have power, mainly on the Buckley side. I don't look at Duraev as a bona fide finisher in this fight, but if he utilizes his wrestling versus a guy in Buckley who has 40% takedown defense, and again, when he gets taken down, Buckley, man, I don't like his get up game very much. Like he's when he's there, he's glued. So, we could definitely see a Duraev takedown early and him just kind of lay there. So we'll see. It's going to be a fun one as always, top to bottom, but really intrigued to hear your thoughts on this one. And if there's a potential shot on a dog here.
So Duraev, he leaned on that wrestling pedigree in his last fight to get himself that win. He got caught early in that one. He survived it. He went through it. He showed poor cardio in that fight, which is surprising because one thing that he was known for coming into the UFC was for having outstanding cardio. So could just be something to do with making his debut, having a little bit of the jitters, exerting too much emotional energy before the fight. So I definitely expect to see his gas tank looking a little bit better in this one. And I think he needs it here because the later this fight goes, I think the better it fares for Duraev. I know you mentioned about Joaquin Buckley's cardio for his size. I tend to disagree a little bit because the way he fights, he's a fast twitch fighter, like it's nothing too technical. He hits you with the power, but all of his movements are that of a fast twitch muscle athlete. And I've seen the later the fights go, he becomes a little more flat-footed, less explosive with his punches, with his combos. Everything starts to look a little bit more labored. So I think in that aspect of it, Duraev has the advantage there when it comes to gas tank, but it's not like he's going to be bent over, huffing and puffing. I think it more so just hurts his output a little bit more than anything. But like you said, he's no real threat from the bottom here, Buckley, and boasting that 40% takedown defense. Yeah. It's obvious which way Duraev wants this fight to go. I mean, we saw it in the last fight. He got clipped, and he said, "Screw this! I'm taking this one to the mat." And a little bit of a caveat that came out this week was that those two are actually training partners for a little bit of time. Okay. Duraev mentioned it in his press conference, and Buckley actually confirmed it. So. There's going to be confidence on one of their sides. I mean, if you're a body language expert, I think you would go with the fact that Duraev got the better of him in those training sessions, just from what I saw from the press conferences. But Clear path to victory here for Duraev. Take him down, try to submit him, try to ground and pound him, try to get him to a decision. Whereas on the Buckley side, you're going for a knockout here. Last I saw it was sitting at plus 275. So his money line's at plus 190. So if you think he wins it, you got to take the knockout prop there at that kind of juice, because I really don't see him winning. He's not going to submit him. He's not going to win by decision here. And I think that's the way to play this fight if you are on the Buckley side. But, you know, I think that there's both deficiencies in both of their games, specifically on the defensive side. I mean, Duraev, no head movement at all when he's throwing strikes. And with someone like Buckley could catch you with a kick over the top, I think that it's very possible. We could definitely see Buckley get him out of there, because all three of Duraev's professional losses have come by knockout. So, you know, taking that into account with, you know, the kind of knockout artist that Joaquin Buckley is, it's definitely live. And at plus 275, I think you're going to have a good chance of that happening. With the fight not to go the distance sitting at minus 190, it's kind of telling you that these bookmakers think this one finishes within the allotted time. So if there's one way to get it there, plus 275, I think it's a very good number on Buckley. Do I think he gets that done? I don't think I'm going to put money on it. I do think that Duraev could get the better of him here. I think that a submission is live on the Duraev side. I'm not quite sure what that's sitting at. But, you know, I got something for you here, Kev. Over 1.5 rounds, sitting at minus 155 here. And, you know, Buckley, for what it's worth, he can knock you out, but he's not a volume guy. He's really trying to counter you, and he's trying to hit you with like 1 or 2 good shots and get through there. And if Duraev's going to be leaning on that grappling, I think there's a good chance that he holds him down, burns some clock for us, so you get that over 1.5. Sitting at minus 155, I think that's a good number there for us.
Yeah, no, and watching the tape of Duraev, what I really like about him, he's a really good inside leg kick. And versus a guy in Buckley, he's going to have to utilize that tool. And yeah, no, I think if this fight strictly stays on the feet, it's just a matter of time before Buckley finds a mark. And to tail off of that KO prop at plus 275, 2 numbers that I'm actually looking at. For the record, Buckley, 3 of his 4 wins in the UFC are either in round 2 or round 3. Right.
Yeah.
The Buckley in round 2, 11-1, round 3, 17-1.
Wow.
That's something that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on. I just think in a guy who, you know, I firmly believe that he has better cardio than people think. Like I said, like the muscular stature requires a lot of energy, oxygen to those muscles, but man, he's just able to push through that. And a guy like him who has that amount of power versus guy in Duraev, who again has fought at the welterweight division, you know, I think that number is really, really good, and I'm willing to sweat that first 5 minutes there. And, you know, it's going to be a fun one. Again, Duraev has to utilize that leg kick, because at the end of the day, we've seen that leg kick, how impactful it can be versus a guy who can strike with power. You know, it really limits their ability to land the mark. So going to be a fun one. You know, Duraev's path here has to take him down. It's just one of those things. I just don't see a striking edge on the feet for Duraev here. And with Buckley's experience, you know, he can definitely put this one out. So going to be a banger, no doubt about it. And that over 1.5 is also kind of intriguing too. But yeah, no, I do lean Buckley here just because of the odds. I just think versus a guy who's 1-0 in the UFC and Duraev, I just don't think that we've seen enough in him to put him at a minus 230 here. I personally have it more like minus 150, minus 170 range. But yeah, no, I think Buckley is definitely live here. He's coming in with confidence. I mean, he's 4-2 in the UFC. Like, he knows that he's in the mix in this promotion. So going to be a fun one. And I don't think either one of these guys is going to go out very easy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree with what you said more about this line where it's sitting at, with someone in their second UFC fight. And Duraev struggled in the first fight. You know, it's not like it was a cakewalk victory for him. And, you know, when it comes to paths of victory, like I mentioned before, I think Buckley has the one in KO, and Duraev has multiple, whether it be ground and pound, KO, submission, or decision. And, you know, when it comes to handicapping these fights, you like to go on the side of the fighter that has more ways to win. But when you disagree with where the line's set at, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because you don't want to go against, you know, either way, whichever way you bet, you're going against one of your rules in your process when you're handicapping these fights, at least for me personally. But, you know, where that 1.5 sits, I really like that a lot. And for what it's worth, I have a little stat here that the last time Joaquin Buckley fought on a main card of a Calvin Kattar main event, he got knocked out.
Was that when he got knocked out by Holland?
Mauricio de Chirico.
Oh, okay, so that was the second time.
And that was on the Kattar versus Holloway card. So just a little fun fact there. Last time we saw Buckley on the main card of a Kattar event. ended by knockout. So take that for whatever it's worth. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you'll probably take Uraya by knockout here. But if you have nothing else to add to that one, KevDog, I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
To the next one, where you have a banger of a fight again. This is the third one in a row where you have Kevin Holland taking on Tim Means. Kevin Holland opened up as the -230 favorite. It has since steamed up to -280. Comeback on Tim Means is sitting at +235 here. Tim Means, absolute legend, 31-12-1 professional record, 14-9 in the UFC, and Kevin Holland 22-7 professionally with a 9-4 record in the UFC, 1-0 down at welterweight. Kev, I mean, do you have a strong lean on this one? What do you think? What are your notes on this?
This is just one of those, man. I mean, Kevin Holland, he's a fan favorite. How can you not love the guy, man?
Big mouth, baby.
He made such a splash in 2020, man. Pandemic hit, had 5 fights in 2020. Knocked out, I think, 4 of those 5 dudes versus some pretty solid guys as well. And kind of had, a bump in the road there, staying at the middleweight division, finding out that going up against guys like Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori weren't his cup of tea, got absolutely mauled in those fights, wasn't even close. And, of course, this fight is at welterweight. And, in Holland's last fight, he noted that, this is his natural division. This is his natural division. This is where he wants to fight. This is where he wants to grow. And, Kevin Holland's style, it's so fun, man. It's that karate, kung fu type deal. But, man, it's just the goofiness of him that I am nervous to bet on him. That's the thing. It's like, in theory, right, you're going up a 38-year-old Tim Means. In theory, Holland should knock this guy out or submit him.
He's got the 9-year youth advantage, which we loved.
Right. Massive youth advantage here, but it's just one of those things. I mean, how can you really trust the guy? It's mind you, the last fight that we saw him in where he knocked out Cowboy Oliveira, right? It felt like he had a different aura about him in that fight where he wasn't that goofy self in that fight. Like if you see some of his previous fights, it's like you're almost watching a comedy show, just the way that he's presenting himself, in the octagon in the middle of a fight, where I think last fight he just looked a lot more composed. Of course, he lost that first round versus Cowboy, but obviously knocked him out in the second round. And I just think that he has so many great tools and so much potential. It's just a matter if he can put them together and just stick in it. I just think that there's just ways that mentally he just kind of is all over the place. And I'm still having a tough time handicapping this one. My gut is telling me Holland inside the distance, but again, you can't count out the dirty bird Tim Means, man. Like you said, he has about roughly 25 UFC fights, which is insane. He's coming off 3 straight wins. Mind you, he's 38 years old, but he's still winning, whether it's versus guys that are great or not. It's just that matter of getting the dub and, having that spirit about him. So, I like Tim Means as a fighter. I think that he's extremely tough. He's durable. He's got really good combos, good striker for the most part. And, I just think that it's just a matter of him getting clipped at some point. I just think that Holland is at a point in his career where he is settled down in this division. And, versus a guy who's somewhat on his way out, it's just the sub prop, I believe, is plus 600 roughly last time I looked for Kevin Holland. So something I'll definitely keep an eye on. But I just think Holland has so much to lose in this fight that, I firmly believe that this is like a statement fight for Holland. Like, is he legit? Like, is he here to bring it or is he here to goof off, man? Because again, he has the tools. He has that black belt, he can put it together. So it's going to be a fun one. And, I expect some violence 100%.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun one. And it's interesting to note that Kevin Holland, when he fought up at middleweight, he didn't cut any weight. So now he's finally fighting. He mentioned it this week, like a professional, where he's actually having to cut weight during the week, make it down to 170. And I'm sure that helps with his mindset. That could be a big reason why, when we saw him last time out against Cowboy Oliveira, why he looks so dialed in, right? Because he's actually putting in that extra work. He's going through that weight cut. It's not just him stepping in the octagon now. It's him going out there to do his job and, get the win by any means necessary. And, just some stats I want to throw out here. He's 8-2 as a betting favorite in his UFC career. So otherwise, when he's the underdog, he is 1-2. So, the fights that he's expected to win, for the most part, he delivers in a 10-fight sample size. And Tim Means, for all the UFC fights he's had, He's only had 4 of them where he's the underdog. He's 1-3 in that underdog role, but
Wow.
it goes to show something that in all those fights, 24 fights, I believe, in the UFC, only 4 times he's been the betting underdog going into them.
That's wild. That's
right.
Wild.
And you did mention that he is on that 3-fight win streak. And I think, at his age, we've seen it time and time again with those guys when they get up there that they start stacking wins. You think like Clay Guida, you think of Tim Elliott, Tim Elliott, for example, is one of them.
Jim Miller.
That's who I meant to say, but Tim Elliott fits the mold as well.
Yeah.
And, it's just awesome to see these older guys just come in here and they just bully these young guys.
One more name, Andre Arlovski.
Arlovski, yeah, how could I forget him? But it just comes down to these guys know how to win. Tim Means knows how to win rounds specifically. Leading into a few fights ago, I think he was at the top in strikes landed per minute in the welterweight division. I mean, that number is still north of 5 strikes landed per minute there. So he's definitely the more busy fighter. He's active, and his fight style is very in your face, right? He wants to brawl. He wants to walk forward, get in your face, make it dirty. And he works the body pretty well, which I think could give Holland some fits here. And majority of punches come straight down the pipe. So it's not like he's going to throw some hooks and get caught with something coming back at him. So it's definitely going to be an interesting fight because to mention as well, of his last 6 losses, Tim Means, 4 of them have been by finish, 3 of which were
I have that in my notes as well. Yep.
I know you mentioned that submission prop there for Kevin Holland, but the one thing that he talks about a lot is that he just wants to fight. It's not like he's coming out here for moving up the rankings or, taking something off Kevin Holland's name. He just really wants to get into a fist fight. And I think someone like that's very dangerous, especially for someone like Kevin Holland. He is, pretty recently off that headbutt knockout that he received from Kyle Dawkins. I think earlier this year it was. So interesting to see, if he gets caught with a few punches, how that holds up. I know that's nitpicking a little bit. You're kind of looking, deeper into it. But, Tim Means throws, and he's going to throw a lot. He could hit you with a ton of little punches that are going to add up over time. But another note I have for this one is Tim Means is very big for the weight class, right, for welterweight. And this is going to be a new situation for him where he's the smaller guy in the octagon because Kevin Holland is huge, where he's going to have a 1-inch height advantage and a 6-inch reach advantage. So, it's definitely an interesting note that you're going to want to keep an eye on here because for the most part, a lot of Tim Means' game plan kind of, goes behind him being the bigger fighter. Like I mentioned, he wants to stalk you down. He just wants to be in your face, have little to no respect for his opponents. So I definitely am taking a little bit of that into consideration when it comes to handicapping this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, you literally took all the words out of my mouth over that segment there. I mean, that 6-inch reach advantage is really nothing to play around with. That is massive. An 81-inch reach in the welterweight division. That's got to be the best reach in that division. I just over the top. It's just that build is kind of like that John Jones build. It's just those long, lanky arms and those kicks. I mean, mind you, man, I do want to point out that Holland, out of his 22 wins, 18 are by finish. So, I mean, he's just that bona fide finisher. He's looking to knock your head off. And, again, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but you've got to imagine those that are have at least a 6-inch reach advantage or more have got to be winning at least 60 to 70% of the fights. I just know it deep down. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Hopefully this is, you love to see Tim Means. He's just such a tough, durable guy who's been in the sport for so long. But he's just your typical kind of journeyman who's kind of been there. I don't think he's really been able to take that true leap. And, I don't think we're going to really see much evolution from him. I think we know what we're going to get from Tim Means. But what you can say is that Kevin Holland is going to have a significant speed advantage here. He's probably going to have – I think he's going to have a power advantage. I really do. I think he's going to be able to connect. Where Tim Means, I think that he might be able to point fight him a little bit better, maybe land at a higher clip. But it's just a matter of damage. And I think when you're talking about damage inflicted, Kevin Holland has a wide array of skills that Tim Means simply doesn't have. Just the style, the arsenal, and what he's able to offer to the table. Kevin Holland has a lot more to look at than Tim Means here. So again, this is a big fight for Kevin Holland because, man, if he loses this fight, it's got to be a brutal one, and this is one where he's establishing himself in this division, and he can really take that next leap here with a big finish, and maybe potentially a headliner on a fight night if we see him clip Means ridiculously. I mean, I would love to see a Kevin Holland main event 5-rounder. So Going to be a fun one, but I just think those long arms, just that long frame, that ability to mix in the submission potentially in the scrambles. I just think that at this point in Tim Means' career, it's just really hard to get behind a guy at that age.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention, Kevin Holland also has that new and improved defensive takedown capability, which he's been grinding on for the last year and a half or so. And, we saw it in his last fight versus Cowboy. He did very well in the clinch and avoiding the takedown. And even for the little bit of time that we saw in the Kyle Dawkins fight as well, that he was able to stuff those takedowns for the most part. So we're definitely going to see Kevin Holland, I think, in his peak form. And this is a guy who was ranked at middleweight coming down. So a win here definitely, I think, will get him ranked in that top 15. And I think we could see him quickly climb up that ladder there in that weight class that, is clogged up a little bit by some older guys like Wonderboy Thompson, Jorge Masvidal, just to name a few. And I think that when it comes to the striking in this fight, because I do think it's going to be a stand-up affair, and I, contrary to many people's belief, I think if anyone's going to initiate the grappling and the wrestling, it will be Holland in this fight, being that he's the bigger guy, that he's been working on, that he's going to want to show that off in front of his home state of Texas, nonetheless. And I do think he has more to offer on the feet, whereas it comes from he's willing to change levels, he's willing to mix up the strikes, he's willing to throw feints in there, whereas Means, like I said, he just plays bully ball in there. He just wants to stalk you down and just work your body, just get nasty in there. And I think that these stance switches that Holland will throw in there are going to give him some fits. And the one thing Holland has to do is avoid fighting on the back foot here. I think we can both agree on that. And something he noted about this matchup in particular was that he needs to fight a little bit more technical, and we haven't seen him fight behind the jab too often, but with that huge reach advantage, you have to imagine a big part of this game plan this week is going to be fighting behind that jab to keep his distance and make sure he's establishing, the distance in the octagon as well.
No, 100%, 100%. I mean, like you said, that division is really cloudy at the top, and, Holland has this aura, this personality about him that is exciting. People want to see him fight. You know what I'm saying? And it's just one of those things. I think he's at this point in his career, he's on the cusp of just having a massive win to really take that step, and like I said, potentially have that main event slot there for him. So going to be a fun one versus the Dirty Bird and Tim Means, and much respect to him and what he's offered to the UFC, but this is Holland's time, and I expect him to close this distance and finish this, within 3 rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And, before we get into this main and co-main event coming up, I want to give a shout out to KOD Media, who powers this show. They just got a new Twitter account. Go give them a follow at KOD_media. And, keep up with all the content that they're producing out there, because it's not just Fight Night. They got tons of other shows coming out there. And, if you're any interested, check out this quick video, and we'll be right back to go over the co-main and the main.
That was clean.
Yeah, right. What a video done by our guy Jigga there for KOD Media. Those guys are the best. Specifically, Jigga, thank you for everything you do. And let's hop right into this co-main event here with the two legends, Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Joe Lozon. Cowboy Cerrone, 36-16 professionally, 23-13 in the UFC. Joe Lozon, 28-16 as a pro with a 15-13 record in the UFC. Donald Cerrone, well, as we all know, I should say, this fight was scheduled for last month, and Donald Cerrone got food poisoning the morning of the fight, so the fight had to be canceled. So I bring that up. Obviously you take that into account for handicap, and it's a second weight cut for both guys in a matter of a month here. And Cowboy's moving down from welterweight to lightweight here. He had to make that weight cut twice. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But the reason I bring it up primarily is because of these betting lines associated with it, right? When this fight got announced and it was going off last month, Donald Cowboy Cerrone, minus 235 favorite. That fight gets rebooked for this card, opens up at minus 180, currently sits at minus 165 on DraftKings Sportsbook. So a lot of people are thinking that, Cowboy isn't going to do well with the second weight cut, perhaps. It could be that he got sick due to the first one, and I do know for a fact he was over in Thailand filming his movie between that fight and this one. So, weird turn of events, I'd say, in Cowboy's life. Lozon's been in the gym training for the last 6 weeks, whereas Cowboy's been filming a movie, over in Thailand. So could be a reason why this line is steaming down here. And, I just wanted to bring that up before we really get into the meat and bones of this one, Kev.
Yeah, no, Joe Lozon, 28th UFC fight. And then we've got Donald Cerrone with his 38th UFC fight, tied for the most wins in UFC history with 23. I mean, that's just spectacular, man. Look, Donald Cerrone is at a point in his career where he is so old, but let's not forget the true Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I mean, this guy has been in some absolute wars. I mean, you're talking some of the best fights in UFC history that this man has been involved with. I mean, I just remember back in high school, we go out to the Green Turtle or the Buffalo Wild Wings to watch the main events. And I just can't tell you how exciting I was to always see Donald Cerrone fighting. I mean, he just stayed so incredibly active and just a very fun style, very fun fan favorite style. And, it's unfortunate, man. I mean, look, the last six fights, he's winless, right? He's got 5 losses and a draw. I believe, is it a draw or a no contest?
No contest versus Nico Price.
Yeah. So, man, it's just it's hard to get behind a legend in Donald Cerrone at this point in his career. Like you said, Matt, I mean, there's a lot of distractions there. Don't really know what to fully expect. And, I just it's hard to find an edge in this one, man, because you look at Joe Lozon and, again, he's old in his own right. I mean, he's 38 years old. But, hey, in his last fight, he knocked the head off of some dude who, if I'm not mistaken, Pierce. He since that fight, I think he's like 3-0 in the UFC since that. So kind of impressive for what it's worth. But I look at Joe Lozon. He's got 13 finishes in the UFC, which is tied for 6th all time. And let me see here. Don Cerrone has 16 finishes in the UFC, which is 2nd behind our boy Charles Oliveira. So, man, it's just one of those things where it's got to be a dog or pass situation. I just don't know how you can put all that money juice on Donald Cerrone. Look, I understand that Joe Lozon is on a 2.5 year layoff, but and on the flip coin, it's one of those things where, he hasn't taken a lot of damage. He's obviously been able to heal a significant amount of wear and tear that he's already endured in the UFC. Where a guy in Donald Cerrone, he's pretty much stayed busy since Lozon, has been off, right? I mean, he's had 4 UFC fights since Lozon's last UFC fight. So, Donald Cerrone has been the busier fighter. Obviously, he's been getting dominated, so I don't really know how much that's worth. But, man, I just think that, Joe Lozon offers this aspect about his game where he starts round 1, guns blazing. He's looking for the finish early. And, I think as the fight progresses, it's really hard to say, okay, this guy has a cardio advantage because both guys are about to turn 40 years old. But I think if you're talking about knockout potential, I think that Lozon has the edge here. I think that Cerrone has a really glassy chin at this point in his career. He's endured so much damage, and I think he's one of those fighters that truly may potentially have some CTE symptoms later in life, unfortunately. He's just taken so much hits. And, you know, again, Lozon, he's 1-3 in his last 4. So obviously he hasn't been doing too impressive at this point in his career. But, you know, I just think that Lozon has a really, really vicious ground and pound. If he's able to knock Cerrone down, I think that's the end of it. I just think that Lozon can be very vicious early. So I'm actually going to be keeping an eye on Lozon round 1, 6-1, round 2, 10-1. I just think versus a guy in Cerrone, like you said, Matt, kind of distracted. I mean, who knows how much he really is in this fight, you know, this point in his career, as opposed to, you know, in the, you know, 2013 is way different. You know, now he's got a family and all this stuff. He's got a movie, all this jazz. So, you know, I think this is Lozon's fight to lose. I really think that he's going to knock out Cerrone here, which I hate to say, because again, Cerrone has provided us with so much UFC entertainment in his career. But what are your thoughts on this one? Have you been able to find an edge here? I mean, you know, you've got 2 dinosaurs going at it.
I think I have an edge. You know, I think I do. And I think you're on the right path here with Joe Lozon at the dog money. I believe his knockout prop, if I'm not wrong, a knockout alone was sitting around plus 500. You could double check me on that while I go over the rest of this here. But my edge lies in the fact that these bookmakers are making Cowboy Cerrone the betting favorite here, which I found to be interesting. I mean, his last fight out against Alex Morono was actually the first time he was a betting favorite since 2017, from when he lost to Darren Till. And, you know, since 2017, our boy Cowboy is 0-3 as the betting favorite, with all 3 losses coming by knockout. So, you know, in that favorite role, it's a smaller sample size at only 3, and I'm dating it back to 2017 because anything before that is a completely different Cowboy Cerrone. And these clips that you're seeing above here as well, that is not the Cowboy that we still get every time.
But I mean, just look at that. I mean, that just brings back so many memories, man. I mean, look at that electricity. I mean, he is just a legend of the UFC. He in my opinion, a UFC Hall of Famer. I mean, if
it were that Cowboy fighting Saturday night, he would be minus 300.
That's what I'm saying. If we just go back, you know, 5, 6, 7 years in time, Donald Cerrone absolutely stomps Joe Lozon.
100%. 100%.
And, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, I think that, you know, people are putting a lot of stock into Cowboy Cerrone moving back down to lightweight. He hasn't fought in 13 months on his own right. You know, he took that year off before the first scheduled fight a month ago, you know, looking to get back. I know he was training at the UFC PI. You know, he had his RV in the parking lot. He lived there. And a lot of people are putting a lot into that. And, you know, it's pretty funny to me because you and I talked a lot last week about these younger fighters taking a year off, you know, how much more improved they look coming back from it. Jake Matthews is one that comes to mind. And then Chase Hooper a few weeks before that comes to mind. But someone like Cowboy Cerrone, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, in the last year, how much could he have improved at 39 years of age? I don't think too much. I don't think enough to make him a betting favorite again against someone who I rate very similarly in style to Alex Morono. I mean, Joe Lozon, very well versed on the ground. He's not going to be scared if the fight gets there. I think he has the advantage there on the ground over Cowboy. I know they're both black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but Lozon, I think, definitely has the advantage there. Cowboy only been submitted one time, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was back in his WEC days. But when it comes to striking, you know, Lozon, he's a decent striker. He's not very technical. In their heyday, Cowboy absolutely has the edge there just based off his kickboxing credentials. But Cowboy's lost a step, you know, to keep it simple. His chin isn't there. He can't take any damage anymore without just crumbling. And when someone hits like Joe Lozon does, it's hard to take that side, especially when you're laying chalk or juice on it. And Joe Lozon in his own right, been off for 30 months. He's not going to have gotten better in that time off, but he could, you know, he preserved his body. He wasn't taking the damage that Cowboy's been taking. And, you know, just based on his style, he's in your face. He throws straight down the pipe. I think all it takes is one shot just to wobble Cowboy and he's out of there. I mean, especially considering the weight cut from 170 down to 155 that, you know, he was fighting at welterweight prior, and the fact that it's a second weight cut, it's red flags for me. And then you consider the fact that he was over in Thailand filming a movie, not even necessarily training or in this time zone for, you know, for that matter as well. It's just everything seems to stack up to Lozon for me. I think Cowboy maybe just took this rematch at the time he did because he felt he owed it to Lozon. He said that to Lozon. Lozon confirmed it as well. But, yeah, I just think that there's nowhere really Cowboy can bring this fight that's going to make Lozon uncomfortable. And that plus 140, I don't know if you double checked me on that knockout prop or
it's
not.
5-1.
Yeah.
But on that point, you get 5-1 there. But let's not forget, I mean, Joe Lozon, out of his 28 wins, he's got like 19 submissions, bro. I mean, he's got a submission arsenal. I understand that Donald Cerrone has only been submitted once in his career, and that's impressive. But you got to envision the thought of the knockdown, take the back choke. It's absolutely there, and it's a potential. And I think that you're going to get a way better bang for your buck rather than going to prop money to go to the round money, because at the end of the day, I don't think that we're going to see a finish in round 3. You can get frisky with it and throw the quarter on top of it, but I think the 6-1 or 10-1 in round 2 for Joe Lozon to finish inside the distance is definitely live, especially since, again, he has that submission arsenal. And the last thing you want to do is bet a 5-1 KO prop, just for him to take, Donald Cerrone's back and choke him out. This is going to be, I would imagine this is probably the retirement fight, hopefully, for both of these guys. It's just, at this age, what more can they offer to the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, I know Cowboy's mentioned he wants to get a few more fights in the UFC. I think he wants 40 fights into the promotion. He's right there.
Yeah.
But what interests me about this fight as well is that Joe Lozon, like I mentioned before, he's been out for 30 months, but he's maintained in that USADA testing pool, waiting for an opportunity that he wanted to take. And the fact that he took this fight and even was willing to fight it 6 weeks after rescheduled shows to me he's very confident in the matchup. He thinks it bodes well for him. And, I think he's also going to be a little bit pissed off that the last fight didn't take place. He's going to take some of that out on Cowboy. Naturally, it's not Cowboy's fault he got sick, but, these fighters are out of their minds. But, in Cowboy's defense, if this does go longer, it does favor him. He does land more output, on average than Joe Lozon does. I think he does have better cardio than Lozon does. But like I mentioned, those 2 weight cuts, who knows if that's going to bode well or be true in this matchup here, both at 39 and 38 years old. So it's more so I'm uncomfortable laying the number on Cowboy. I also think there's some multiple ways that Joe could get there. So at that plus 140, definitely have to take it. Also definitely going to take a stab at that plus 500 knockout prop as well. I just think it's very live.
100%. And you've got to know that Donald Cerrone, in the back of his mind, that he knows that he's tied for the most wins in UFC history, and this win would put him at the forefront. And it's crazy, man. Donald Cerrone, 5 hours and 50 minutes in the octagon in the UFC. I mean, that is just astronomical. And like you said, man, I think the fact that Lozon has taken this break off, having that preservation of his body, I think is gonna be noticeable in this fight. I really do. I think that not being able to take any shots and, being able to kind of focus and and it's interesting because his last win versus Pierce was in the TD Garden in Boston, where he's from.
Yeah.
So, it was like, okay, maybe this is the last one. And this has to be the last one for Lozon. I mean, to get a legend in Donald Cerrone, he knows what he's up against, what type of legend he is. And, to go out on top and beating a legend in Donald Cerrone would be quite the retirement goodbye for Joe Lozon. So I'll be on the Lozon side. I don't think I feel comfortable taking the money line just because I think that there's value elsewhere, massive value elsewhere. Ending Cerrone early is so live. Like that glass chin has been so noticeable, right? And we're getting 6-1 to 10-1 second round. I'm willing to take a stab at that. I just think that Lozon, whether he's 38 or not, he still has power. And versus a guy in Cerrone, who knows how much real power you really need to get there to end this fight. I mean, really just finding a clean shot could knock him down. And that's it. So going to be a fun one between two legends. And, can't wait to finally see this fight. It's a dinosaur fight, but it's two legends of the sport, so you've got to respect it.
And this recording is taking place before weigh-ins on Friday, so hopefully this fight does take place. I don't want to put anything bad out there, but let me ask you real quick. If this fight finishes inside the distance, which side do you think does it?
100% Joe Lozon. I just don't think at this point in his – come on. I mean, Donald Cerrone, he's got some nice finishes on his record, but at this point, no. I don't think by any means he's going to come in here versus a guy who's well-rested to put his lights out. Hey, it could happen. I mean, it's Donald Cerrone, so maybe he just throws a wild kick in the first before he gets somewhat gassed and makes an impact. Very well could happen. But I think the fact of Lozon coming out guns blazing early is going to be the difference for that, and as the fight progresses, of course, that power is going to decline. So, I think when it comes to inside the distance, I want to say Lozon. I mean, the odds makers aren't going to want to look that way. I mean, the numbers don't look that way, but I think that you can truly make an argument that this line where it's currently at could be flip-flopped. I really do believe it. Even though Lozon's been on this layoff, I just think that Cerrone has shown so many red flags over these last 6 fights, getting knocked out left and right, in the first round, where Lozon's live. Lozon's live to get this job done inside. And, maybe we see like a Barberina, Matt Brown, legendary fight at this stage of their career go all 3 rounds, right? That we just saw a few months ago. So, I like Lozon in this fight. I love Cerrone. He's offered so much to the UFC. One of the best ever to do it without a belt around his waist. And looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I asked that question because the fight does not go the distance. Prop is sitting at -200 here. So the bookmakers are heavily weighing that this fight doesn't make it to the judges. So I just wanted to get your opinion there, because that'll tell the story on which side you necessarily want to go if you play those odds maker games. But enough about the old folks here. Let's get into this main event. Calvin Kattar versus Josh Emmett in the featherweight division. This one is going to be just another one where it's absolute fireworks. Both guys want to keep this fight standing for the most part. Calvin Kattar, 23-5 professional record, 7-3 in the UFC. Josh Emmett on the other side, 17-2 professionally, 8-2 record in the UFC. Josh Emmett's on a little win streak of his own. I believe he's won 4 in a row coming into this one. Meanwhile, Calvin Kattar is coming off a complete and utter domination of Giga Chikadze in a 5 main event. And that was some impressive comeback after the beating he took from Max Holloway.
Oh my gosh. And shout out to Calvin Kattar, man. That +200 dog versus Giga Chikadze hammered the heck out of that. But enough about that. We got to keep moving forward, man. This is going to be a really fun one, man. Josh Emmett, he's 37 years old, which kind of worries me in a sense. He's had a massive amount of injuries, in that Shane Burgos fight. He tore his ACL in the first round, fought through to a unanimous decision and ended up having one of the most gruesome just injuries on paper to that leg that I've almost ever seen. I mean, he had like a cyst that popped in his knee, a femur fracture, cartilage defect in his tibia. I mean, that's just massive. And you got to credit the heart for Josh Emmett to come out and knock or whoop. Was it Dan Ige?
Dan Ige.
So I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. And he's got heart. He's coming out of Team Alpha Male, so. Versus, his coach, Uraya Faber, one of the legends of the sport. And, I look at Calvin Kattar, man, he is such a dog, man. I mean, the last 3 fights have gone all 5 rounds, 75 minutes worth of time in the octagon his last 3. So I think we can put 2 and 2 together that he's taken quite a bit of damage his last 3 fights, whether he 50-45 Giga Chikadze or not, he still took quite a few shots there. And, Calvin Kattar has incredibly crisp boxing for this division. Really good takedown defense, but it's at 89%. So although Josh Emmett can potentially mix in the wrestling here, I think it would be a waste of his energy, quite frank. I just look at Calvin, man. He's got just such clean hands, clean combinations, just knows how to put the pieces together on the feet. And, you look at Josh Emmett, man, he's the power puncher, he's that massive hitter looking for the mark. And there's no doubt that he's going to have the lower output on the feet. I think that if Emmett wants to win this fight, he's got to knock out Kattar. And, I don't want to completely just wash it out of the picture and not think that that's a legitimate possibility, because I do think that it is. I think that Calvin Kattar's last 3 fights, the amount of time, the amount of wear and tear that he put on his body there, I don't want to say it's going to take a toll, but I think it'll have an effect, a correlation in this fight. I really do. And a guy in Josh Emmett who's 37 years old at this point in his career, again, these guys are at the pinnacle of their career where this is the biggest fight of their career. Like at this age, Calvin Kattar's out, in his mid-30s. There's no 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward at this point. Like, this is where you really got to keep moving forward. And I think that the Emmett KO line is live here. I really do. I'm not like confident by any means, but still got a little bit more research to go in this fight. But I think that Josh Emmett has the tools. He's got the coaching staff around him to expose Calvin Kattar. I think he has the knockout punch. No doubt Calvin Kattar is extremely durable and he can take a punch, he can take a kick. But I don't know, man. I just think that, Josh Emmett does have these tools. He has the power for this division, and he's got to be confident coming into this one. So going to be an extremely fun one. I do worry a little bit about the injured leg there and how that'll really affect his power. But I think Josh Emmett is extremely smart. I think he's got a really good IQ, and he's going to have a great game plan going into this fight. I just hope that, if they lose round one, lose round two, how is Uraya Faber and co going to, mix up the game plan here to get the job done? Because I think that he's going to have to, at some point, mix in the wrestling. I think it's got to come at some point. Does it come in round one? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that if he's getting pieced up in the first round, that they're going to have to make some adjustments in that second.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? Because I've been hearing the Josh Emmett mixing in the wrestle angle, right? But I personally think that Calvin Kattar is the one who's going to be implementing wrestling, if anybody. I mean, we've seen him do what he did against Giga. Josh Emmett never shoots, ever. He's a boxer. He wants to throw. And, he is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whereas Calvin Kattar is a blue belt there. But, just to speak on the gambling lines here, Calvin Kattar is currently sitting at minus 240. Josh Emmett, the comeback, is plus 195 there. I do think the only path to victory for Josh Emmett here is by knockout. I don't see him landing more than Calvin Kattar. I don't see him, like I said, mixing in the wrestling to get it done either, unless we see a similar Rob Font, Cheeto Vera situation where Kattar wins 4 minutes of every round, and then Emmett knocks him down and pounds on him for the last minute of every single round. I mean, that's always possible, right? We saw that, like I just mentioned, with Cheeto and Font not too long ago. But no real edge when it comes to handicapping the favorite and the dog side here. I mean, Calvin 4-0 as a favorite in the UFC, whereas Josh Emmett is 4-1 as an underdog. So both guys in this situation, they both pay out. So no edge there. But the one edge I do think Calvin Kattar has is that this is his fourth 5-round fight in a row, whereas Josh Emmett has never gone past 3 rounds. In his last fight against Dan Ige, he was absolutely gassed out come the 3rd round there. And like you said, at 37 years old, coming off the leg injury that he did come back from in that last fight, it really showed in his cardio right there. And with someone as big and muscular as he is and the power that he throws behind every single shot, the longer this fight goes, the worse it is going to end up for him, I believe, especially with someone like Kattar, like I mentioned, has that 5-round experience, has high output, will be in your face, punching you with 6-7 punch combinations at a time. And like I said, he can mix in the wrestling too if he wants. The where it boils down to for me is, am I willing to lay minus 240 on that? Am I willing to go down and say that Calvin Kattar wins this fight 70 to 75% of the time when they fight each other? I'm not too sure, considering the death punch that Josh Emmett possesses, because he hits hard, man. Like, I don't want to breeze over that. Josh Emmett hits hard. Like you said, Kattar extremely durable, right? But he's never been hit by Josh Emmett clean. I mean, Josh Emmett, I believe, has gotten a knockdown in every single one of his UFC fights.
That's impressive. That's impressive. And, I know I mentioned this stat earlier in the week, but for the record, I mean, in the featherweight division, out of all the top 10 fighters, there's only been one finish inside the distance within that top 10 of guys that have gotten finished, right? Which was Korean Zombie versus Volkanovsky. And, man, I don't know. I have this jittery feeling that we could see the second this weekend, man. I mean, the under 4.5 line is at plus 115. It's either going to go one of 2 ways. Number one, well, 3 ways. Number one, Calvin Kattar, just gritties it out to 5 rounds decision. Boom. Number 2, Emmett finds a mark early where he has the power, he has the strength, he has the cardio, and isn't tired enough to fully maximize his power. And number 3, Calvin Kattar is at a point where he just breaks down Emmett in the 3rd, 4th round, right? Like, where Emmett is so gassed. Yeah. Calvin Kattar has a ridiculous pace where it's just, it comes to a point where, the wheels are going to fall off. And I think that's a very real possibility. Like you said, Matt, Josh Emmett has a significant amount of muscle that he's carrying for this division. And with that takes a lot of energy, a lot of cardio to maintain that musculature. So, you know, it's an interesting stat, but I think that this is one of those fights where you know that there's going to be a high pace, you know that there's going to be a high volume, especially on the Kattar side. And with the combinations he throws, I don't want to completely throw out a KO on the Kattar side as well. I think that this fight really could potentially end inside the distance. You know, both these guys know what's at stake. They know that they are really knocking on the door of a title shot, and both these guys want to make an impact. So by all means, I don't think that this fight is going to be a boring one. You know, I think that we kind of have a good sense of these main events, of how they're going to play out and the type of energy that it's going to bring. And with this one, it's just pure fireworks. You know, both these guys are going to come forward and land a lot. So going to be a really fun one. My heart is with Calvin Kattar, especially since that big win last time out. But as a plus 200 coming in 50 to 45 on the decision, I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't know. This is going to be so fun, so energetic. I feel as though inside the distance is a real possibility here.
I might get some slack for this, but I think that the Kattar KO is more likely than the Emmett KO. Okay. And I think that what that boils down to, for one, Josh Emmett, 37 years old, and he looked every bit of it in his last fight versus Dan Ige. I mean, nothing against Dan Ige, but, you know, when it comes to the top 7 in the division, he just doesn't really hold a candle up to them for the most part. I mean, we've seen it in his past few fights. And, you know, Emmett, I don't want to say he struggled with Dan Ige, but he didn't completely dominate him, you know, for 3 straight rounds. And when I look at that third round and just how labored everything looked and how gassed Emmett really got, and that fight is nowhere near going to be as high-paced as this upcoming one will be with Calvin Kattar and the pace that he puts on you. And not to mention, in the stand-up affair, Calvin Kattar has the 5-inch height and the 2-inch reach advantage here. He's got the better technical boxing. He's better defensively. I just don't think that Josh Emmett has anything to offer Calvin Kattar that's going to catch him by surprise. I think he's pretty one-dimensional with his strikes. He doesn't throw leg kicks at all, which would be a great counterpoint to Calvin Kattar's style. So when you consider all those things, you know, at this stage in their careers, you know, maybe Kattar does win this fight 70% of the time. I think it's more so around 60 to 65%. I would think that this fight would be around sitting minus 175-ish. I'd be more comfortable with it there on the Kattar side. But, you know, depending on what the knockout prop is on the Kattar side, that might be worth a shot as well, because, you know, right off the bat, I thought that this juice on the over 4.5 would be a little bit greater than it is. It's sitting at minus 145 to go over, minus 135 for the fight to go the distance. And you would imagine, you know, considering the style of Kattar's past few fights, that that'll be closer to minus 170, right? Minus 165. So, you know, certain things kind of play into that Kattar by knockout role. And like you said, if it comes, I think most likely it comes late in the fight once Emmett is completely gassed out and gone, and he's just grabbing onto straws there to stay in the octagon. So, you know, interesting main event. Definitely going to be fireworks for the fans in Austin, Texas. I think that this main event, this main card from top to bottom is going to produce. Will it produce as well as last week's main card did? I mean, that's a
lot to live up to. That's a lot to live up to there. And on that KO prop for Calvin Kattar right now, it's in that plus 215. In your defense, Calvin Kattar has never been knocked out. He got submitted like back in 2008 when he was really young, but never been finished since. So that's got to put some stock into that, right? I mean, we all know that Calvin Kattar is going to be extremely tough, very durable. And I already know that you remember the brutal knockout of Jeremy Stephens, right? On Josh Emmett. Shout out Jeremy Stephens fighting on PFL tomorrow. Mind you, he almost didn't make weight and had to shave his beard and hair for this fight. So
he looks like Josh Emmett now.
You got it. It's one of those things, man. Hey, if Josh Emmett gets knocked out, maybe he goes on a little tour bit down to the PFL to get his revenge.
He's too old.
Hey,
but it's funny you mention that, because Jeremy Stephens, he knocked out Josh Emmett, and you know who knocked out Jeremy Stephens, right? Calvin Kattar did.
Yeah.
And you know, I just think when you look at the level of competition these guys have fought, where do you think that Emmett ranks on fighters that Calvin Kattar has fought? Because Calvin Kattar has fought Max Holloway, Giga Chikadze, Dan Ige, Jeremy Stephens, Zabit, who just retired, you know, very sad, and Renato Moicano, Andre Fili, Shane Burgos. So Where does Josh Emmett rank among all those? Is he in the top 3? I don't rank him above Zabit, Max Holloway, and I don't think he possesses the challenge that Giga presented, with his kicking capabilities, or even Jeremy Stevens, albeit that was in 2020, more so on the decline of his career. But Stevens got the better of Josh Emmett, so you can't necessarily say that he ranks higher than him as well. So, taking all that into account, I favor the Cater side. But again, like I said, do I want to play minus 240 for it? I don't know. I think that number also steams up a little bit closer to fight time.
Yeah, and the beauty of these books is they're you can be on a side, but there are better values outside of that money line. And at that line, like you said, Matt, it's tough to get around. Even as a parlay piece, it's just one of those things, man. Whether Cater has been knocked out or not, and it's funny because we're just going devil's advocate back and forth, but like.
So you have to do, right?
You have to do it. You have to look at both sides. You have to dissect each side. And, Emmett coming in, is like a 7-month layoff. So, we could see a very improved Josh Emmett here. He knows that he's kind of knocking on the door here at 37. He's in a camp where I think has been somewhat underwhelming in the UFC at Team Alpha Male. I think with the team around them, you'd expect a little bit more dominance. I mean, I think their top guy right now is Song Yadong. Shout out Li Jing Liang, who we haven't mentioned yet until now, but here he is. I can't wait for this main event. It's going to be so fun. Going to be a banger. And I think that there's going to be a finish. I mean, look, there's only been one finish in this division out of the top 10 guys in the last 3 years. So all the odds are pointing against that. But, it's just one of those things where we could see Emmett break down. He's not known for his cardio. He can get broken down, knocked out, or Calvin Kattar lands a mark, because we already know Calvin Kattar is going to bring the pace all 5 rounds. And, the previous fights being 25 minutes is so incredibly valuable. Yes, he took a lot of wear and tear, but on the flip coin, he's been there, done that. He knows what it takes, that different gear that you really have to kick into in those championship rounds. So going to be fun one, a lot at stake for both these guys, and expect some action. No doubt about it.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at the lines here as well, like we mentioned, the under 4.5 is at plus 115. Fight does not go the distance, sitting at even money at plus 100. If this last main event showed you anything, take that fight does not go the distance. Don't get, a little bit greedy for that extra 15 points there with the plus 115, because only way I'd be taking that under if you gave me like 25, 30 points of juice there. If it was sitting at plus 125, plus 130 opposed to even money and does not go the distance, there's your value. But if you plan on taking this advice and you want to bet an under, I would strongly suggest you go to fight does not go the distance instead of the under 4.5. So I just wanted to throw that out there for our value bettors out there.
Wise, because, we saw in this previous main event that 4.5, that under 4.5 didn't hit, right? I mean, it was just
imagine how mad you'd be if you had under 4.5 and it finishes in that last 2 minutes and 30 seconds, or probably in that fight, it was probably like 10, 15 points of juice. So
right.
I would be kicking myself for that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, it's going to be a fun one, man. A lot of hype coming out of Calvin Kattar's camp. He's got a lot of really good training partners there, and a lot of momentum there. So going to be fun. Cannot wait. And you already know that the Texas venue is going to be absolute madness.
Yeah. And just want to throw it out there, Kev, I would dominate you in a wrestling match. I'd be minus 1,000 favorites. So shout out to you, P-Mix, for bringing that prompt up. I would ruin Kevin. Plus 100,000 would be him to win under 1.5 rounds.
Oh man, I love being the underdog, man.
But all right, guys, thank you for joining us for this main card breakdown. And if you want to get the prelim breakdown, if you want to get our official best bets, please join our Twitter Spaces at Fight Night KOD on Twitter. We will be going live Saturday at 11 a.m. on the East Coast. So come hang out with us, listen to these prelim talks, get some main card fights, some props. I know me and Kev, we've been profitable on the year. Kevin, I believe, is sitting at plus 9.64 units. Since we started tracking, I believe, a month and a half, 2 months ago, I myself am at plus 2.8 units. I had probably plus 1.3 units of profit last week. And I think, Kev, you made out with the profit last week as well, right?
Yeah. Just I believe it was just about a half unit. It would have been a huge swing if Malkoon got the decision, but I'm always happy of staying in the green. And with this Twitter Space, it's not if, it's a when. We put in the time, we put in the effort, where we're consistently putting out winners. And I firmly believe that number is going to continually grow. And I firmly look forward to hopefully us both cracking 10 units this week.
Yeah, and that number should be higher for both of us. Like you said, Malkoon last week should have gotten a decision, arguably, to a lot of people. And I believe my split decision prop last week should have hit there as well with the Kyung Ho Kang fight versus Beth Garil Dana. So, these numbers, if anything, it goes to show that we're consistent. I know personally I haven't had a losing fight card over minus 1.5 units, I don't think. And I don't think you've lost more than like a half unit on a fight card, maybe a unit tops. But for the most part, I think I've had 2 losing fight cards this entire year, and you, I believe, have only had the 1. So, I mean, it just goes to show that the work that you put into this, and, we try to be consistent as we could be, and we're not going to, stretch you out. Because I know a lot of these people that give fight picks, they'll have you bet on every single fight. They'll lay out 20 units on a fight card, which just makes absolutely no sense. So, we do it from a real economical standpoint that, we're actual handicappers for the most part.
Right.
We're not just fugazi giving picks and throwing numbers as a unit amount next to it. We take it very seriously, that you guys listen to our advice here. So I can't hone that point in enough that, at the end of the day, we're looking out for the people that tail us more than ourselves for the most part here. So you're not going to get into much trouble betting our fight cards here. If anything, you'll lose a few bucks here or there, but we just try to stay consistent to make that money.
And it's always quality over quantity. And it's one of those things where, aside from Nicholas Stoltze, a lot of these picks that we're putting out that lose, it's very, very close. You know what I mean? It's competitive, and it made sense, right? Like, even though you lost that split decision last week, it made sense, when you did the job, right? You got there through decision. And it was just unfortunate luck there. So,
and you saw the fight differently than I did. You had a scorecard for Dana there, and I had it for Kyung Ho Kang, and I know a lot of people had Dana as well. So, if I bet that bet 10 times, I think I'd come out profitable in the long run, and that's basically what you're trying to do here when you handicap fights. So, it just I can't wait for this fight card. I can't wait to print some more money. And, join us on Twitter, like I said, 11 a.m. Eastern at Fight Night KOD on Twitter. Thank you guys for joining us. Tune in next week for our breakdown of that card as well. And we'll be keeping this train rolling for like another 7 weeks straight, KevDog.
Yeah, man. I know we're going to make it rain this weekend, man. We were both in the green last week. And, man, I just feel like we're knocking on the door of a really big week. And, I know both of us are extremely confident in what we put out to the people. We don't do this to provide losers. And, I firmly believe that over time, people are going to know. People are going to realize, like, okay, these guys know, and the numbers aren't going to lie. So we're going to stick to this hustle, stick to this grind, love this sport, love everything about it, and can't wait for this card this weekend.
And as Dana White says, if you don't know, now you know.
Now you know.
So thank you guys for joining us. Fight Night, we are out.
Peace.